On the last day of May 1889, a wall of water 40 feet high and half a mile wide slammed into a city of 30,000 people. It arrived almost without warning. In about 10 minutes, most of Johnstown, Pennsylvania was simply gone. But this was no act of nature. The lake that swallowed the city belonged to a private club, a secret mountain retreat for the richest men in America. They had rebuilt the dam on the cheap, blocked its safety systems, and ignored warnings for more than a decade. 2,209 people died, and not one club member ever paid for it. The Calamity Files. Johnstown sat deep in the Allegheny Mountains of Pennsylvania, wedged into a narrow valley where two rivers meet, the Little Conemaugh and Stony Creek. By 1889, it was one of the great steel towns of America. The Cambria Iron Works ran day and night, and its furnaces drew workers from Germany, Wales, Sweden, and Hungary. 30,000 people lived packed onto the valley floor. A floodplain. Every spring, the rivers rose into the streets. People joked about it. They rolled up their carpets and waited it out. Water was simply part of life here. 14 miles upstream and 450 feet above the city stood the South Fork Dam, an earthen dam over 70 feet tall and more than 900 feet long. When it was built, it was the largest of its kind in the country. It had been designed decades earlier to feed a canal system with 5 discharge pipes at its base to control the water and a stone spillway to carry off any overflow. But the railroads killed the canals and the dam was abandoned. It changed hands, fell into disrepair, and partially failed once. A previous owner even pulled out the discharge pipes and sold them for scrap. The number history would remember from this valley, 2,209 dead, was still 10 years and one impossible survivor away from being questioned. But that comes later. Then, in 1879, the ruined dam found new owners. A group of some of the wealthiest men in Pittsburgh, among them Andrew Carnegie, Henry Clay Frick, and Andrew Mellon, created the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. They patched the dam, filled the reservoir, and named it Lake Conemaugh, a private mountain paradise 2 miles long with a clubhouse, cottages, and sailboats. But the repairs were amateur work. Rocks, mud, brush, even horse manure. No engineer supervised them. The club never replaced the discharge pipes, which meant there was no way to lower the lake. Ever. They screened the spillway with iron fish guards so their prized bus could not escape. Screens that could catch debris and choke the dam's only safety valve. And to turn the crest into a carriage road wide enough for 2 coaches, they lowered the top of the dam itself. Engineers warned the club repeatedly that the structure was unsafe. The warnings changed nothing. For 10 summers, the Millionaires sailed. Below them, Johnstown worked and lived. On Main Street, in a big frame house above the family's dry goods store, lived the Quinns and their bright, headstrong 6-year-old Gertrude. Her father, Mr. Quinn, distrusted that lake on the mountain. When the rain came, he begged the family to leave for higher ground. Most of them stayed. Remember Gertrude? We'll come back to her, on a mattress, in the middle of the wave. On the night of May 30th, 1889, the worst storm ever recorded in that part of Pennsylvania stalled over the mountains. Up to 10 inches of rain fell in 24 hours. Creeks tore out trees, rail lines washed away. By morning, Johnstown's streets were already underwater. The worst flood anyone could remember. But the real danger stood 14 miles upstream. At the lake, club president Elias Unger woke to a terrifying sight. Lake Conemaugh had risen 2 feet overnight and it was still climbing, nearly a foot every hour. Unger threw every man he had at the dam. Laborers plowed earth onto the crest to raise it. Others hacked at a second spillway and hit solid rock. At the main spillway, the fish screens had jammed with storm debris exactly as predicted. And now they would not come out. The dam's last safety valve was choking. A young engineer named John Park rode to the town of South Fork to telegraph a warning down the valley. The dam may go, but the dam had almost gone so many times before that nobody took it seriously. The warnings were never urgently delivered. In Johnstown, people bailed out their parlors and waited for the rain to stop. Shortly before noon, the water began pouring over the top of the dam. Earth dams do not survive that. By early afternoon, the men on the crest could only fall back and watch. At 10 minutes past 3 in the afternoon, the center of the South Fork Dam simply moved, and then it was gone. Witnesses said the dam did not so much break as step aside. 20 million tons of water thundered into the valley. The entire lake drained in about 36 minutes. What came down the Little Conemaugh was not a flood. It was a moving mountain. Water, trees, boulders, and houses grinding forward at up to 40 miles an hour, at times filling the gorge 70 feet deep. The hamlet of Mineral Point vanished. In East Conemaugh, a locomotive engineer named John Hess saw the wave coming, tied his whistle open, and raced his engine ahead of it toward town, a long scream of steam that gave some people their only warning. The wave picked up his train yard behind him. 33 locomotives swept away like toys. Woodvale, a mill town of 1,000 people, was erased in minutes. Nearly 1 in 3 of its residents died. In Johnstown, 7 minutes past 4. Survivors said they heard it before they saw it. A rolling thunder, and then the hillside itself seemed to be moving. The wave hit the city, carrying the wreckage of 4 towns. Houses exploded on impact. Whirlpools pulled down buildings whole, and there, torn out of her collapsing house into the churning water, was 6-year-old Gertrude Quinn, alone on a muddy mattress, spinning across the drowning city. A young man named Maxwell McCachran saw her from a rooftop. He couldn't reach her through the current. So he waited, and when the mattress swept close, he threw her bodily over open water into the arms of 2 men reaching from a second-floor window. She lived. Whether the rest of her family had, she would not learn for days. At the old stone railroad bridge below the city, the wreckage of Johnstown piled up. 30 acres of splintered homes, barbed wire, animals, and people, the living tangled with the dead. And then, at nightfall, the pile caught fire. Perhaps 80 people who had survived the wave died in the flames in full view of those who could not reach them. Gertrude Quinn survived that night on a hillside, soaked and screaming but alive. Most of her large family, sheltering in their sturdy brick house, lived too. But her Aunt Abby and Abby's baby son did not. Gertrude would grow up, marry, and decades later write the whole thing down, so that a child's eye view of the wave would outlive everyone who felt it. Morning revealed a wasteland of mud where 4 square miles of city had been. 2,209 people were dead, including 99 entire families and nearly 400 children. Bodies were found as far away as Cincinnati. Within days, help poured in from around the world. Clara Barton arrived with the Young American Red Cross, its first major disaster response, and stayed for 5 months. And the club? Its members quietly funded relief. Carnegie later built Johnstown a library. But in court, they claimed the flood was an act of God. Every lawsuit against them failed. Not one member of the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club was ever held liable, and not $1 of damages was ever paid. The outrage over that verdict helped push American law toward a new idea: strict liability, the principle that if you keep something dangerous on your land and it escapes, you pay. It took a drowned city to establish it, and that famous count of the dead was never quite final. 11 years later, in 1900, a man named Leroy Temple walked back into Johnstown, alive. He had been listed among the flood's dead since the day it happened. In truth, he had pulled himself out of the wreckage at the stone bridge, told no one, and quietly left the valley to start a new life. Johnstown had spent 11 years mourning a man who had simply walked away. Modern research settled the last question in 2013. The club had cut the dam down by 3 feet, not 1, and halved its ability to shed floodwater. Today, the empty basin of Lake Conemaugh is a national memorial. Grass grows where the water stood, and in Grandview Cemetery lie more than 750 victims beneath identical white stones, never identified, never claimed. Johnstown's Millionaires kept a lake where it didn't belong, and a city drowned. But you don't need a mountain lake to drown a street. Sometimes the wave is made of something no one ever feared. If you haven't seen how a wall of molasses killed 21 people in Boston, that file is already open. It's on screen now.